Then we started in 2007. We're on Fund 5, where we've invested almost $20 million over that period of time. And it's real investors. I'm an investor in all 5 funds. It's an SEC-registered investment company. These investors have real money at real risk in real estate deals that the students have pretty much complete control over.
Okay, so episode 49, a special episode. This is our first academia-related episode, and a great school at that. So at University of North Carolina, Dave Hartzell, thanks for coming on the show. Dave, you are the Stephen D. Bell and Leonard W. Wood Chair of Real Estate and Finance at University of North Carolina, and the Senior Director of the Wood Center for Real Estate Studies. So Dave, thanks for coming on the show.
That's right. Probably the longest title you've ever had to read at the beginning of a show like this. Right?
It might be, but it's a great one. Thanks for coming on the show. I'm excited for this.
Thanks, Matt. Great to be here.
One last thing before we get rolling. So you're on vacation now, which I'm fortunate that you did this episode. So we're looking for some office space. So we're in Oak Island in Proactive Vacations, who's a local in 3 different places, vacation manager and brokerage company. So their information will be in the link in the show notes. They'll have their website. So if you're looking for any of their services, they'd be a good company to go with. So
they're very kind to host us, that's for sure.
Very nice office. So Dave, I'll let you give an intro. I know I laid it out at a high level, but your career has been quite a few different things. So do you want to give an overview of where you are today at UNC? That'd
sure.
be a good place.
Yep. I'm, as you said, a professor at UNC's real estate program. We'll celebrate the 50th year of teaching a real estate class in this coming year, which is awesome. The 25th year of our Wood Center for Real Estate Studies, and we also host a conference every year, an annual real estate conference. And this year will be the 25th time we've run that too. So the coming year, academic year, is going to be a big one for our program.
Yeah.
I teach classes. I've sort of wound that down a little bit as we've hired new faculty, and provide sort of oversight and guidance for the Wood Center, which, as I said, we founded 25 years ago.
That's awesome.
It's great. It's been a good ride.
It'll be a big year coming up. So to kick us off, we can start kind of through your college days and then leading up to Salomon Brothers. Everyone that has told me to have you on said you played a pretty big role in really the formation of the CMBS product. So I think that will be neat to hear. But you tell the story from where you want to start, maybe at UNC or at Delaware. But kind of what transitioned you into the real estate world?
Yeah, good question. My dad was a community banker in Wilmington, Delaware, and I was always sort of interested in what he did. He basically made loans for Mutual Savings Bank, which was, raising deposits from the local community, then make a mortgage back to the local community. And that always intrigued me, just sort of how it worked. It wasn't always easy for him, but it was kind of interesting just to see that model for how residential housing is financed. So I studied economics at the University of Delaware, and stuck around for a year to get a master's of economics. My girlfriend at the time, and now wife, was a year behind me, so that was a good thing to do. So we both sort of left at the same time. And there I met a guy named Bob Schweitzer. He's passed away now, but he was at the control of the currency, which was my first job. I was probably the least prepared graduate of an undergrad and master's of arts in economics program of anybody that's ever come out of that program. And it was the very first year of the program too, which was kind of interesting. But I went to work for the control of the currency, which, as you probably know, is the regulator of national banks. John Heitman was the control of the currency, and there were a whole bunch of academics around kind of doing research on commercial banking, some theory, some analysis of, what value they provide to the economy. We wrote a lot of reports to Congress that Mr. Heitman would present, which was kind of fun. Got a taste a little bit for international, got a taste a little bit for just how the banking system worked. Was there for only about a year and saw, this is an old school thing, this was literally 1979. So I saw an ad in the Washington Post, a classified ad for a job, help wanted to work at a group called the Urban Institute in Washington, D.C., 21st and M Street. And so I left. I had pretty good computer skills at the time. Left there, went to work for the Urban Institute, where I met some of still my best friends. Two really good friends. One, Steve Malpezzi, who taught at Wisconsin for many, many years and retired. Another, Jacques Gordon, who was the global chief economist of Jones Lang LaSalle, based in Chicago. And we were the three research assistants before we went back to grad school. And again, it was one of the best faculties in some sense that I ever was on. There were a lot of PhDs. We were a think tank that, my group did housing research. So housing policy research. We had a lot of grants from the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Did studies on everything from how IRAs work with mortgages, sort of creating residential indexes based on some new databases that were out at that point in time. Created my first research paper, which is where I really got the bug for that.
What was the first paper on?
It was on, what we tried to do was sort of create pricing indices around the country. So at that time, the census and the annual housing survey would survey residents about the features of their houses, and we had transactions prices too. So what we would do is create a model to basically estimate how much different characteristics of a house add to the value of the house. So bedrooms, bathrooms, type of heat, acreage. Pretty much, I can't remember how many variables we had. We had a lot of them. And we put that into a forecasting model that we could apply from those 59 MSAs to every MSA in the country. And it was pretty useful in terms of housing policy for HUD.
Right. And
it became, again, we were sort of we were first movers, let's say, in that. Now the annual housing survey, as you probably know, is tremendously broad, wide. Obviously, it's got data going back to the early 70s, so there's a lot of really interesting historical stuff you can pull out of it. And so that was my first paper, which was really helpful in getting into a PhD program, which was nice. Not too many incoming PhD students have that. But again, I worked with a great guy named John Weicker, who passed a couple of years ago, Chicago-trained PhD, who was one of the housing gurus, really, in terms of how housing works. Again, we did a lot of affordable housing stuff, and things like that. So it was a really good introduction to research, and also being around just incredibly smart people.
I bet. So, what made you choose UNC after that? And did you always know that you wanted to go to grad school too?
Again, we got married in 1979, and I told my wife, she thought I was done school at that point in time, and it sort of surprised her. I don't know if I surprised her. I was going to go back to school and applied to the planning program at George Washington University, which was literally just down the street from where the Urban Institute was. And then this guy, Bob Schweitzer, and some other guys said, both the controller and Urban Institute said, well, you should expand and figure out what you want to do. I said, well, man, PhD in economics would be the natural thing. And Schweitzer said, don't go to economics. He said, go be a finance professor. I said, wow, I'm not even sure what that is, to be honest. But and so he helped me pick probably about 8 or 10 schools, everywhere in the Mid-Atlantic region. We didn't want to stray too far. Carolina, somebody I worked with a little bit at the Urban Institute that was at LSU, Florida, a bunch of schools, great schools. And so my wife and I went to visit UNC first. My brother lived in Charlotte, and we went down on one of those days where it was probably 45, 50 degrees and rainy and cold in Washington, D.C., and literally came across the border on I-85, which was pretty new at that time. This would have been 1980, March of 1980. No, it was March. fall 1980. And again, just came down. It was just fantastic. Just beautiful. The weather was great, 70 degrees. It was a reading day on campus. So it was December 7th. Now I remember exactly when it was. Reading day on campus. We had an Irish setter. She was running all over campus. And I met the finance faculty. They were all just awesome, just really nice people. That's one thing that UNC Carolina's good with, is that the people are just great. The culture's outstanding. And so I interviewed there. Fortunately, my wife made friends with the guy who was the head of the PhD program at the time, a fellow named Richard McAnally, who was also instrumental later on. And so we just had a ball, and then driving away to go see my brother, I said, if we don't get into Carolina, I'm probably not going to go back to school.
Wow.
It just had a huge impact. So so I basically called everybody else up, set up, not thinking about, not knowing for sure whether we got in. And then on March 31st, I got a letter from UNC. It was just a crazy day. We were on 21st and M Street. It was the day Ronald Reagan got shot.
Oh, wow.
So the ambulances all came down from the Capitol Hilton to, George Washington University, right by our offices. And man, there was just limo after ambulance after fire truck and all this stuff. What the heck is going on? And it was also the day of the National Basketball Championship, NCAA National Championship, and Carolina was playing Indiana.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
What a crazy day.
Crazy day. And so they weren't going to play. I was in Philadelphia, where I was born. And Reagan apparently said from his bed in the hospital, he said, we got to play this game. Unfortunately, Carolina lost by a lot. It was Isaiah Thomas, and the Indiana teams at that time had been great. But it was also the day I got my letter of acceptance. So basically, again, told everybody else that we wouldn't be going there, and ended up moving to Chapel Hill the next July of 81.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty fun.
Absolutely. And then now you're back there playing a pivotal role for students in similar positions, obviously, trying to figure out what they want to do or knowing what they want to do and being in the MBA. So I want to dig into that a little bit later. Sure. But transitioning or going through the PhD program, what changed for you? Like, where did your interests go? Where did you start to want to do research? Because then that plays a pretty big role right after school.
Absolutely. Yeah. First, what I really wanted to do, given my dad's influence, was, and I did a lot of work on sort of bank balance sheets, especially mortgage loans and other loans when I was at the Urban Institute as well. And my goal going back to get a PhD in finance was to be a Federal Reserve Board economist, which now sounds just really, really boring. And go back and do sort of policy. They're very active in academic research. They're very active in obviously policy as well. And again, I sort of halfway through getting my PhD, met another guy, a guy named Mike Miles, who was actually taught the very first real estate class in 1976. So he's really he started our program. And again, just became great friends with him. And when I was getting ready to write my dissertation in my third year, I was working with another guy who had worked at the Fed, and he said, why don't you pull together 5 ideas and just write up short summaries of what you might do. And, and I realized that I wasn't real sure what I would do in banking. And then Mike said, here's a deal for you. He said, I just came across this database from, at that time, the Prudential Realty Group. And he said, I think we can create something pretty cool out of it in terms of, again, another index, as it turned out. And they said, you can finish it in 1 year. And I said, wow, man, that's, so a PhD in 3 years is pretty good. And we pretty much pulled it off, which was great. And so I got into, again, sort of met all the people at Prudential Realty Group, which at that time, this is pre sort of 86 and pre-S&L crisis days, they were the largest developer of real estate in the country.
Wow.
An insurance company.
Yeah.
Which, again, obviously that ended after the S&L crisis and through the RTC and all that stuff.
But it seemed like a lot of insurance companies at the time did the similar thing. They
came
kept all their cash and developed land.
Well, they did. It was interesting because the ERISA was passed in 1974, and it basically mandated pension funds to diversify across asset classes. At first, they were only in bonds. And then some states were on the forefront of, allowing their pension funds to invest in stocks, which was, I think Indiana was maybe the last one to do so. And then in 1974, the Employee Retirement and Income Security Act was passed, and it basically said you need to diversify more than that. You've got these huge pools of money. They weren't huge now relative to today's dollars. But everybody was a defined contribution plan. And since insurance companies had all the real estate on their general accounts that they had diversified and they owned for a long time because the asset liability duration was pretty solid, pretty well matched, let's say, they were the experts. So pension funds just started throwing money at the insurance companies, and they were, which they were good at, which is great, which started investing and creating the original commingled real estate funds, the open-ended, funds that are still in existence today. And through that, they maybe thought they were experts in development as well, and it all came together. They had a lot of money. There was a lot of, tax breaks throughout the economy for, with depreciation benefits. And so they were huge. And for me, it was important because they had kept really good data on each of the properties that they owned. So that, let's say there were 400, 500 properties. They kept all revenue, all operating expense data. Most of it was unleveraged, so that wasn't really much of a factor. And so I went up to the bowels of some basement in Newark, New Jersey, with sort of the big old computer papers, and basically copied all these data from the original documents for all these 500 properties that were all over the country. They were, major food groups at that time: retail, office, industrial, some hotel, and it was just extraordinary that they would open that up to somebody like us. So that became my dissertation. It was the first paper. It was called Diversification Categories in Commercial Real Estate, and where ERISA mandated diversification across asset classes, stocks, bonds, real estate, and so on. This was really the first to look at what diversification looks like within a real estate portfolio. And again, looking back on it, it wasn't hugely sophisticated technically or any of that stuff. But at the time, it was just so unique and fun. And again, Mike Miles was the one who got permission to use those data and permission to let me go up in the vaults of the basement at Prudential in Newark. And it just started me on a career. That sort of fired me out, just learning more about that. And we did the first paper on real estate as an inflation hedge, which again,
what year would that would have been?
It would have been that would have come out in 85. Something like that, 85 or 86. So when 81 was the peak of inflation. Yeah. November of 81, mortgage rates were literally in the 18s. Treasuries were 12s, 13s or more, and so inflation was a huge issue. It's ironic, as we've sort of in the summer of 22, when inflation felt like it was starting to come back, and the Fed sort of didn't cut interest rates and actually raised them. I got calls from people saying basically we haven't had inflation since 81 of any sort. There's been little periods over time. And, wanted to sort of ask about my 1985 or 86 paper.
Really?
To see if, which is interesting.
What types of folks called?
Institutions, basically
economists?
institutional investors that were looking to see how inflation was going to affect the returns of their portfolios. things like that. It was, we looked at, this is probably way too much for this particular
This is perfect
thing, but we looked at it. We measured expected inflation and sort of just unexpected inflation. We took inflation into two categories. And what you want is your portfolio to diversify, to protect you against the unexpected part of it, right? And so we showed that real estate was a pretty good hedge against inflation. But again, since we had a secular downturn, that secular decrease in inflation since then, right? Till the,
somewhat recent.
Yeah, till 3, 4, 5 years ago when treasuries were literally in the, less than a half for short term. Nobody ever worried about inflation in their portfolio.
Of course.
So they got to go back 40 years to pull this thing out again, which was kind of fun. Pretty interesting. Wow. Yeah, it's kind of.
This episode of the Deal Ranch podcast is brought to you by Hux Curry Advisors. Hux Curry Advisors is the complete real estate consulting and advisory firm in the Myrtle Beach market, providing the services needed for any stage of your project, whether it's strategic planning, site selection, due diligence, project management, land planning, or anything in between. If you're an institutional investor looking to expand with a strategy, a small business transitioning from renting to real estate ownership, a landowner seeking maximum return, or a national retailer searching for a key location in this top growth market, reach out to Hux Curry Advisors for all real estate consulting needs in the Myrtle Beach MSA. To learn more about Hux Curry or connect with the team, go to huxcurryadvisors.com by clicking the link in the show notes. Finishing up your stint at UNC as a student at that time, what did you learn to enjoy about doing all this research? So by the time of doing your dissertation, and then also you did the one paper before, what about doing research or sitting in the basement in Newark did you like most? Because it seems like that was a big catalyst, or building this book of research is why Salomon was interested in you too. And I want to hear it from your perspective. But what did you like most about doing research and having an idea to test? Yeah,
I mean, back then, this is going to sound really strange, but there were, there's a couple of institutional real estate groups. One's the NACREIF, National Council of Real Estate Investment Fiduciaries, and one is the PREA, Pension Real Estate Associates. That was sort of the founding of that. There weren't that many real estate academics around, and a lot of them were focused on appraisal and sort of old school kind of real estate stuff. So it's, again, just sort of pure dumb luck to be sort of led into this from Professor Miles to start all this. And it was so unique and different because prior to that, there was no commercial real estate data. Even now, for researchers, it's hard to find sort of access to what's mostly proprietary data, right? From all the RCAs and, you name them. So it's really unique, and sort of I realized that as this grew, there were a lot of other interesting ideas that would flow out of it. And I just got into it. Like I said, I could do computers real well. At that time it was SAS. And, from there I started looking at how real estate investment trusts work in a portfolio relative to, sort of the private real estate from like a Prudential or something like that. And that was really interesting too, kind of breaking it down even further. And at the time, literally knew very well the small group of real estate faculty members around the country. There weren't many of us. And you pretty much knew everybody at those conferences too.
Oh, interesting.
Like the institutional real estate investment management industry was not huge, and everybody was trying to grow. It was incredible. It was a really cool, holistic kind of thing where every insurance company and this was before private equity funds came out of the RTC process, but they all realized that if there was more information, that we'd all be better off, because it would, we would have maybe an index that sits right next to the S&P 500, and people say, oh yeah, that's definitely the real estate index, to match the Lehman index and all these other indexes. And it was, again, just a whole lot of really, really fun, interesting, smart people not necessarily including me, but sort of being involved in trying to grow this, and damned if they didn't do it.
No kidding. Yeah.
It grew
Different landscape now, for sure.
It's a huge landscape now, where there's a new private equity or new institutional investment managers literally coming out every day.
Daily,
which is, again, it's exciting, but it's just very different now than it was back then.
So when you finish at UNC, because I want to spend a lot of our time back at UNC in the more modern light, but when you finish at UNC, you go to Texas, and what was at University of Texas?
Yep.
What was a professor there for a short period of time?
It was an assistant professor, the lowliest of the lowly. Went there, basically, the idea is to write more papers and teach well and become, get tenure, which I did. As it turns out, that's where Mike Miles got his PhD. So his dissertation advisor was the guy that I went to work for, a guy named Charlie Wurzbach, who ultimately left about the same time I did and became head of research at Prudential. At that time, it was not the Realty Group anymore, I don't think. And then was the president of Heitman for quite a while. That'll play into the story later. So he was on the faculty there, and he and his wife took real good care of my wife and I. We had a baby while we were in Chapel Hill. So when we moved there, she was 1.5 years old. And was there, sort of enjoying it, figured we'd be there. It's a long way from home, long way from Delaware and Philly and Chapel Hill. But we made a lot of good friends. And then, again, sort of interesting coincidences. I used to get Business Week and delivered. And on the picture, on the cover was a picture of this guy named John Goodfriend, who had no idea who he was. Yeah. And within about 2 weeks of that, I got a call from a headhunter. And basically from Russell Reynolds, and again, which I didn't know anything about at the time, and said, "Hey, Salomon Brothers is starting a real estate research group, and would you be interested?" And I said, "No, there's just no way." So they said, "Why don't you just fly up and see what it's like, and all that stuff." So I flew up, met this wonderful woman who was the headhunter, and stayed at a great hotel, way better than a lowly assistant professor could stay in. Walk down Wall Street, past Trinity Church, and all that. It was really cool.
Your wife went on this trip as well?
No, she went. Okay. She did not. And they went down we were at Broadwater Street, overlooking the Statue of Liberty at that time, and just went up and was not overwhelmed, I'd say, but I just couldn't figure out who was who and what was going on. So, but it went pretty well. So I went. I left again, pretty sure I would never go to work in New York. Flew back home, and within a couple of days, they want you to come back. Called me and said, "Why don't you come back?" I said, "Man, I don't know." I said, again, she said, "Just come on up. You're gonna meet sort of all the head people at Salomon," and so I did. And it was crazy. It was one of those nights where I just had this again about 3 or 4 weeks ago. I went to a wedding in New York, where you fly in. And you're flying over the city, and it's crystal clear, and all the buildings are just, man, it's like stunning from a real estate perspective.
Absolutely. It's the greatest place.
Oh, it was incredible. And I said, wow, man, this is different. We flew into LaGuardia, came down, same thing. And on that trip, I got to meet good friends. I got to meet the guy named Dan Carney, who started and previously ran Ginnie Mae, and I got to meet the infamous Lou Ranieri. It was his idea to start a commercial real estate research group at Salomon. And
so how did that conversation go? Or walking into that room, what's that like?
So I walked.
They're at the top of the world
guys,
in that.
They were literally just written up in the Business Week article a few weeks before. And so I'm waiting outside of Dan Carney's office, and he's literally. This is like the picture of the bonfire of the Vanities guy or the Wolf of Wall Street or whatever. Right. He's got 2 phones, and he's talking to the one and hollering to the other, and I'm waiting outside his glass window of the office saying, "Come on, man, let's talk." And he kept it going for forever, and and ultimately I didn't get to talk to him because he was all this. And I get it now after having worked there. And my next meeting was with Louis, so I walked into Louis' office. He said, Dave, nice to meet you and all that stuff. And he said, why don't you start with any questions, of you? And again, couldn't go online or he couldn't find anything on who these people were. And I looked at Louis and I said, well, tell me, what do you do around here? And he literally, rose from a seat. Now, I won't use the exact language he used. But
what did he say?
It was right on the trading floor. I looked out on the trading floor. He said, you ask anybody out there on the trading floor, and they'll tell you I run this effing place. I said,
which was true.
Which was absolutely true. Yeah. It hit a nerve. And so
it's brilliant.
I sort of backstroked from there. And, then we sat down and talked, and he actually was a lovely guy. I mean, the whole story is written up in Liar's Poker, which was the exact same period that I was there.
Is he brilliant to speak to? Is he really sharp? Like, what do you think? He's really
sharp. Yeah, I've met several people like this. Not everybody, obviously, where he's thinking like ahead or thinking in a whole different universe than what I would think like or anything. So he's thinking, everything with any question or any conversation would then spark some really interesting sort of part of, that tied into his career and stuff. But he talked about, how good Salomon Brothers was to him when his wife was sick and, and all that, which again is written up in the book. And he's a huge family guy and I am too. And, we just hit it off. It was just really, it turned out to be really good after all, cool. But, it had a very ominous start of that discussion.
He started in the mailroom there or something like that. Crazy. Yeah.
In the mailroom, worked his way up, through the trading floor and all that stuff. He ultimately became, vice chairman of Salomon Brothers, which is pretty extraordinary.
Pretty wild.
It's a great, great story.
If for context, as we kind of go further into your time there, so he created the residential mortgage-backed security, right?
Yeah. Michael Lewis writes that up incredibly well in Liar's Poker. That's one of the best histories of how that
unbelievable book. Yeah. So then, following your meeting of asking Lou Ranieri who he is or what do you do here, what was the transition to working there, being like, hey, this is the right place for me and my family or time? Like, what enticed you to go?
Good question. Part of it was just being back on the East Coast, to be honest, being a couple hours away from home. It was pretty important to my wife. She was pregnant with our second kid at that time. And he was born in New Jersey. And, so that was part of it. This doesn't drive me, but the money wasn't bad. That's for sure.
It was
especially, I literally was making, I think, $39,000 as an assistant professor in Texas, and scraping by. And that was not the case in New York.
And then VP at Salomon.
Yeah,
during the 80s.
Great. Yeah, which worked out really well.
So what did you do there? I heard in one of the other show you did that you sent to me, Dirt NC, great episode. And that there was the first real estate research group really that any large institution had. So like, what was the core of your role and what did you start doing?
That's great. As I said earlier, Charlie Wurzbach went to run Prudential's real estate research group. And most of that was interesting and good stuff, but there's a lot of marketing their products and things like that. We were completely independent in a lot of ways.
Oh, neat.
We didn't have, we were selling products, but it wasn't, we weren't selling funds or we weren't selling sort of long-term relationships or anything like that. It ended up, we sold mortgage-backed securities and started residential. And then, as we talked about earlier when I was there, we sort of did some of the first commercial mortgage-backed securities. The early ones that don't look anything at all like the ones do now. There was not a rating system, which again, like The Big Short is another good, Michael Lewis story. There were no, Moody's and S&P and Fitch, I think at the time had, were just starting their ratings of real estate securities. Since we had been doing it, we kind of knew a lot more about it than they did, which, could have been good or bad, I guess. But the first deals were, we did Olympia in York, a 3-building portfolio We did a deal. I still got the big books on these things too back home.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. Fisher Brothers did a single asset commercial mortgage-backed securities. So it was just one, and that ultimately morphed into sort of pulling securities together as just straight pass-through securities. And we did, I can't remember the dates, but it's if you're not pitching any books or anything, but I wrote a book with a friend of mine in England. It's just real estate investment book that this is all written up in terms of the history of debt markets and commercial real estate. But it's, we did the first, what we called senior subordinated security, which ultimately became, targeting investors with different levels of risk in sort of from mortgage related cash flows. Ultimately became CDOs.
Wow.
Blew up The Big Short. I'm not holding myself responsible for that. In The Big
Certainly
Short.
not.
But it was the sort of the foundation of all that, which was kind of neat. And you said I played a significant role. I was basically a guy in a room.
Doing the research that was significant, though.
When we were talking about all this stuff, we did see a lot of cool CDO stuff, and and again, nobody had ever done it before. Yeah. We had, I want to say, I may get this number wrong, but it's the magnitude is appropriate. I think we had 350 PhDs in the bond market research group. Wow. The mortgage research group, and sort of doing equity and options and futures, all that stuff too. That was by far the best faculty I've ever been on.
So what exactly were you? What was the research? So you come in. You're coming from Texas. Now you're on Wall Street. What is the research that you're doing, and then how are you interacting with the team there? Are you setting out where they're saying, "Hey, look for this data." You're evaluating and getting it, bringing back, or are you testing your own hypothesis that you think would be beneficial to the?
A lot of it was team? So the group was started by a guy named Ken Rosen, who's a really well known, and rightfully so, professor at Berkeley. Mm-hmm. He started the Fisher Center. He and Peter Lehman were the two guys at Penn, were the two guys that really created a brand name for their institutions and for themselves as being economic prognosticators. And Peter Linneman's still involved. He did a Willie Walker podcast just last week. It's just really interesting. And so Ken Rosen's charge from Louis was to put together a real estate research group for commercial real estate. Again, it was a small group of people that were doing it at that time. So not that I was one out of a million, I was one out of a small group. Yeah. And another guy came in named David Schulman, who was he was my boss, and we had 4 or 5 assistants and research assistants, things like that. And our goal was just to sort of try to be thought leaders in commercial real estate. So we wrote, I'd say, literally hundreds of papers on, my first paper was sort of naturally grew out of the other stuff. It was real estate in the portfolio. And, whereas before academically, it went out to some academics who read it and a small group of PREA and NCRE people. Salomon Brothers had a huge loudspeaker, and we'd send it out to every one of our clients across all kinds of, across all our functions. And, and we just follow up. We did MSA reports on commercial real estate markets, which again was, we did a lot of, some of the most notorious was Houston, in say 1986, maybe 1987, something like that, maybe 88. Right before, David Schulman, this guy I worked with, was one of the first guys to see that it was about to hit the fan in commercial real estate, right? There was so much being built, and any shock to the system would have created problems. Mm-hmm. And obviously the savings loan crisis and sort of Reagan brought in depreciation benefits in 81 and then took them away in 86, which took a leg of the stool out. So the valuations went down. Well, obviously their mortgage values were the same. Mm-hmm. And it completely destroyed as we know it, the real estate industry at that point in time. And so we wrote a report on Houston, and I think that it was panned widely because it was so extreme. I think David wrote a sentence that says something like, Houston won't need an office building for 14 years or something like that. Because
they had that much supply.
This was, again, the Prudential Realty Group had a big office in Houston. Texas was booming, absolutely booming. So there were buildings just going up all over the place, without sort of care of a pro forma or without really
all speculation.
They had all the capital. They had a lot of capital, with people who earn money by investing that capital or putting that money into deals can sometimes not be a good situation.
Right.
And obviously it turned out not to be.
Mm-hmm.
So we forecast that, and we did a report on Chicago and all these other cities that showed that, things are going to get really bad. And we were panned. I did a PREA conference with a guy from, this is way too much information, probably, with a guy from Morgan Stanley. And he was a sales guy for Morgan Stanley, sort of selling, product. And they had a big fund at the time, still do. And I had all these, we had the carousels with this is, you're too young to remember, but the slides, and there's a carousel and it showed up on the screen. And I was like the doom preacher saying, man, everything we're all about to suffer, and
that's what his presentation was on.
Mine was.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And, and all these people were so heavily invested into this.
I bet they love that.
I got a very tepid sort of thing. I remember walking out with nobody saying anything to me. And, but before I did, he got up. He was the speaker after me. He said, this won't surprise you, but there are different opinions in real estate. I completely disagree with them. And he got a rousing applause and all that stuff. But 6 months later, they
would have been better listening to your presentation.
Yeah, for what it's worth. But we did a lot of that stuff. We did sell some product. Obviously, we did a primer on commercial mortgage-backed securities. We did sort of a lot of primer on sort of these senior subordinated securities, just to educate everybody. And then we go all around the country and world to basically tell people what we're doing to some extent. Here's how we're taking this group of mortgages and creating a security out of it, and then finding these different tranches so that we can, hit a AAA investor. We'll have something left for whoever wants to take the risk. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing was that the originator of the mortgage held the most risky pieces back then, and that's what went away. In the global financial crisis, is that they basically sold all that out. So nobody actually held the bag that was involved in creating the securities.
What wrapped up your time there, or when did you want to conclude? Because you were only there full time for like 2 years, and then you stayed on in a consulting position.
A little more 2 years, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
The lifestyle was not great for me.
Sure.
I never saw my kids, except for when they woke up Saturday, put them to bed Sunday night. That's just not me. We had, like I said, a new baby that was born up there. Coincidentally, and again, sort of my life's a series of coincidences. This guy, Mike Miles, there's a fellow, the guy who worked with Mike left the university to go teach in California. So Mike called my wife and said, "Hey, you guys want to come down?" She said, "I'm coming." I don't care if he's coming. No, it worked out that, I went down and obviously knew everybody there. So hopefully it was a pretty easy hire for them. And we got to settle right back into the Chapel Hill
UNC
lifestyle, which is about as good as it gets. And UNC, like I said, there were no surprises there. Not as many as when we moved to New York, for sure. And, and I kept real good friends with the people that work there still. So I had a 5-year sort of research retainer where I'd write a paper every quarter. At that time, I had created I think it was useful, a survey of institutional investors around the country which we had tremendous response rates from.
How'd you get it to them? Just mail?
Just mail.
Yeah.
Hey, there was no email.
I know.
It was fax or mail. Or we wrote it up. We had a format for all the papers that we sent out, and we basically had set it out, with the usual mail and all the franks and stuff, and and people people were really good about responding. So every quarter, every year, we would put out the results of the survey about expectations, about, what's the appropriate risk of real estate at this point in time, and and how active are these people going to be, these institutions going to be, which again gained a little bit of notoriety. So I did that. We continued to write papers. I continued to go speak to, institutional investors and clients and things like that.
On behalf of Salomon for the next 5 years?
Yeah. So it was a nice off-ramp.
Peculiar time, too, through that savings and loan crisis to still be working that heavily with it. That's a really interesting time frame to be on Wall Street.
It was, yeah, no question about it. And again, just following through in 1991, Salomon Brothers, one of the guys on the Treasury desk, basically tried to corner the market for an auction of treasuries, which is obviously against the rules. Yeah. He got caught, and so that was really kind of the first real downfall of Salomon Brothers. They got in real trouble. SEC came in, Warren Buffett came in. He owned a whole bunch of preferred stock. Mm-hmm. And he basically took control, hired a new CEO. That's when Louis left. I guess, sort of the rest is that they became part of the whole successor firms and what have you. But,
wow. Good transition point to UNC. So we chatted obviously about you starting there, but to give context, can you go over the program or the different programs that you have for real estate in modern day, and then we can kind of go back in time to where you jumped back into the program at. That way we can show how it evolved over time too.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, so we pride ourselves on sort of being the most student supportive program of any in the country. Again, it's hard to actually prove that or measure that, but I think the proof's in the pudding with people like you've seen with Brandon Edge from, who's here, right, from Flagship, and Michael Smith, who from the Downtown Charlotte Partnership, both of whom were alums, which I'm very proud of, as well as thousands of others. But we, a lot of centers of real estate studies or centers are set up for research purposes to support faculty in doing research, but we have always been supportive of our kids, undergrads, MBAs, PhD students. So our center was set up mostly to help them. We've raised, quite frankly, a significant amount of money from our alums to, do a lot of really nice programs for undergrads and MBAs. For a long time, our flagship was the MBA program. And to some extent it still is, but now we have two flagships. Our undergraduate program has grown immensely. It was always mostly because of manpower, woman power. We didn't have faculty. We didn't have supportive staff or anything like that. So we focused on the MBA program, which a lot of schools rightly did, I think, and taught a course, maybe two courses in the undergraduate program. Fast forward to today, we've got, still have the MBA program, and I think we have the most comprehensive and coordinated real estate curriculum in any MBA program. I can't remember, the number of hours is enormous that they have to take, but then there's also a tremendous number of really cool electives that they can take. One's a global trip that they go away for 2 weeks over spring break or in May of each year. I did 20 of them, which was just awesome. Yeah. Really get to know the kids better.
Read the article about it. It said that you run the kids pretty hard on those trips.
It's
morning till night.
It's not a holiday. It's not a vacation. I think I did my last one about two years ago. We went to Uruguay and Argentina, and it's fun, and but everybody's in it together. It's just a really great way to meet 25 students that you see every day in the classroom or around school. But that's sort of you see them first thing in the morning. You go have a beer with them, the last thing at night, and you're together most of the day. You really do learn a lot about trades, which helps because we're very honest in our recommendations that we give to the employers that hire our kids. Which is great. But what we've done more recently is mirror that curriculum in the MBA program to the undergraduate program. And so within the major of business, we've got an area of emphasis in real estate where the classes actually line up quite well relative to the MBA program, which is great. We have, our undergraduate program by design is relatively small for a university our size. So, right. We've always been around 750 or 800 kids in 2 years. So it'd be 400 undergrads in any given year, where we usually try to get 10 to 15% of the undergrads. Wow. We're in the process of at some point doubling that. Mm-hmm. And we've also in the process of also what's happened is that the popularity of the undergraduate real estate programs are increasing as well, mainly due to some unbelievably good hires that we've made in the Wood Center for Real Estate Studies, pretty much in the last now 4 or 5 years. And I love to talk about those people because they're so great. And during COVID, we also added a minor. A lot of our very successful undergrads from UNC weren't business majors. It's very obviously such a small number of students. It's very competitive to get in. I don't know about you. I certainly wouldn't be able to get in today. Back then, and that we needed an outlet for other people who were decidedly not business majors to come to our program and take and get a minor. Wow. It's turned out to be great, just fantastic. Very strong interest in people from econ and geography and public policy and administration, from all over the university that come and want to learn about real estate. Mm-hmm. So we have Lynn Tachi's the one, our undergraduate associate director, and she goes on to campus to educate sort of freshmen and sophomores about what real estate is. Most kids come to college, they think real estate's like being a realtor, the man or the woman that sold them their house, and we're so far away from that. So we try to provide similar training, obviously at an undergrad level, to the minors and majors so that they can go out. This year we roughly are now at about 30 MBAs per year that do real estate. We'll have a bigger year next year because admissions have been really great out of, say, a 260-person MBA class. So we're, again, 10 to 15% in there. And then undergrads we graduated, these numbers will be a little off, I think 85 area of emphasis people, students. And we try to keep the minor at 25 to 30. Over 4 years of undergrads, we're churning out a lot of really good students.
No doubt.
That we think get unparalleled training across all the elements of what it takes to be successful for a real estate person entering the industry. And fortunately, like I said, we've been around for 50 years. I've been a part of it for 45 years. Yeah, come to think of it. And, literally we've produced thousands and thousands of alums, just, and friends of our program who have been incredibly supportive, that hire our MBAs, hire our undergrads, and a lot of new employers every year as well.
Well, everyone speaks highly of you that's been in the program. That's how I found out about it. But it seemed that to make sure I read this correctly, it said of all the MBA students enrolling into an MBA at UNC, 10 or 12% are going into real estate.
That's true.
Each year,
or more. I mean, we've been a higher number. Yeah, it's great. It's it's a significant component, I think, of our program.
Yeah.
And frankly, I think that's good for the school as well, just because, again, of the quality of the people that have come through, the quality of people that come to our MBA program, is just outstanding. People tend to come to our program specifically because of the real estate program, which makes us all proud. It's not just me. I want to make sure that's
clear. We'll talk about
we got
a
huge team that's just, everybody's got their shoulder to the plow every day. which makes we're very much a we shop, not an I shop or a me shop, which is I think critical for any institution, but certainly works for us.
Absolutely. So speaking about that, so we can weave those different people in. So on your second term at UNC, when you came back after Salomon, compared to what we see the program now, and I left out, like there's the only student managed real estate fund, it seems like at any college is at UNC, which is really neat too. Where was the program at when you came back to UNC? And then what helped you build the program? What key hires or what key classes or what really evolved over time to make it what it is today as one of the top, if not the top, real estate school?
Good question. So when I got back, it was just me and Mike Miles.
Okay.
2 faculty members. I taught undergrad class, and he taught the 2 MBA classes. But what was sort of unique was that, he had created all these really good contacts across the industry through the research that, he was responsible for, that I did, and that he continued on after that. He was really concerned about making sure that they got jobs and making sure that they were connected to the institution, not just today, not just next year, but 40 years down the road. And I could give you 10 instances of people who are still instrumental in our program from, the late 80s or, graduated in 1990, which again is a huge part of our culture and the creation of a network where you can go anywhere in the country and, find somebody from UNC that will help you out as you're looking for a job, as you're doing doing deals together in Los Angeles or California or Birmingham, Alabama, wherever it is. It's just really cool to see how that's grown. But back then it was just 2 of us. And like I said, we taught 1 undergrad class, several sections. And he taught a class in kind of case-oriented class, which is basically exactly how we do it now. And he got this cool grant from the Urban Land Institute back in the mid-'80s, jointly with our planning department. We have a world-class planning department that would basically pull together planning students and MBA students who likely may be across the table from each other as developers and city planners.
Of course.
And brought them into a real estate development class where they created teams of 3 or 4 people. They go out and try to find a real deal somewhere, usually within a couple hours of town, and they work together to make this deal work. So the planning students really got a feel for underwriting and, what the mind of an MBA is. It's looking to maximize profit and value, whereas they're looking to maximize benefit for, the community and not inflict any damage on the community. And it was extraordinary. And that was his creation. And we still teach that class today, some, 45 years later.
Wow.
40 years later, 42 years. So it's just really cool.
Hands-on,
very hands-on, which is what we try to do, for we call ourselves real world real estate program, real world real estate program, because we try to put people into situations where they're not simulating decisions as you would in a case study or, in a business school situation, although we do a lot of that, but it's where they're actually making decisions that have an impact on somebody, right? Yeah. Investors or, whatever. And we've got now 2 classes that and 3 actually, that provide them an opportunity to really have an input into how things are done. And
what are the other 2?
So one's the fund. So it's development course is one. The other is the real estate investment fund that we started now 18 years ago in 2007. And we now have housing affordability affordable housing practica, which is we've just created literally in the last year. We hired Eric Marabojic from George Washington, who's very active in the affordable housing world, sort of in the greater DC area. He's was at George Mason, like I said. He came down and he's really helped grow our and introduce new kinds of experiences to the students, and also for us, our program as a whole, in the affordable housing world, which obviously, if you read headlines, that's one of the most critical things out there today. So we have a symposium, I think it's December 6th next year, so write that on your calendars.
Cool.
Where investors, developers, government entities come and basically try to come together to create a discussion that will hopefully help to alleviate some of the problems that our country has, certainly in our local area, anywhere, with affordable housing. And that's been a really cool new initiative that we've created in the last 4 or 5 years.
Wow.
Yeah, it's good.
Who are the other critical team players in the program? And what do you think that they all add that maybe the students really look forward to, and those other people?
No, it's a great question. I mean, to sort of work through from past to now, for a long time, it was just me. Again, and sort of ironically, 3 years after I got back to Carolina, Mike Miles left to go become the head of research at Prudential, and he became the head of research at Fidelity, and then started the equity real estate group at Guggenheim. So he's had just a fantastic career.
No kidding.
He's back in Chapel Hill now, so I get to see him all the time.
Very
we
cool.
get together for some reason every month or so, which is great. So it kind of left me with 3 years in with the program, which required hiring a lot of people, bringing in new people. At that time, it was only faculty. So we had some faculty come and go. And some of them were great. All of them were great, let's say, but left to go find some other opportunities somewhere else. But we always maintained those classes. And the real change point came in 25 years ago when Leonard Wood decided he wanted to really help to elevate what we do. And it's the early 2000s, and he basically provided funding for what now used to be called the Center for Real Estate Development, now it's the Wood Center for Real Estate Studies. And he did it in a brilliant way. If anybody ever wants to give a lot of money to a university, this is the best way to do it, to make sure you get what you want. He told our dean at the time that he would give half his money up front, but the dean and me would have to deliver several things before he could get the second half.
What were those items?
One was to create an executive director of the Center for Real Estate Development at that time. One was to have at least a half-time that would grow into a full-time permanent assistant, let's say, or associate that would help us sort of guide us through stuff. Originally, we were kind of the local house for the district, the ULI district, which we did for a little while. It didn't really fit our sort of paradigm, but it ended up going somewhere else, and they did a great job. Hire another full-time faculty member, tenure track, hopefully with tenure, and create some new courses. And again, I was the one that was going to do the work, which is great. And we were able to do all that within a couple of years. And so we got the second amount. And the way the university budgets work is that, again, very broadly, somebody gives you, let's say, $5 million, you get to keep, we get the 5% income on that. It goes into our UNC endowment. The income pays off at, let's say, 5%. It was at the time. So that was our operational funding, where we could pay kind of, an executive director who was gifting his time to us. We hired a guy named Tom Harvey, who was former president. He was a Tremco residential developer for a long time. Then he ran Florida for Pulte, sort of in the run-up. Retired just before it all went to pieces, and wanted to give back. He's a 1972 alum from our program, and having somebody that everybody knew, that he was very world recognized, having been in the industry, to work alongside me and our other faculty, was just fantastic. And that was again sort of the real inflection point for our program. Having faculty, having staff, both at his level and then an assistant level, which really helped us sort of pull together a lot of really interesting stuff, like the fund, for example, that was created out of that. Our conference that we do every year, which we had 920 people there last year. We hold it in the Dean Smith Center in our basketball coliseum. It's the only venue that will hold that many people. And to provide more structure for, these international trips, for, creating fellowships, to bring sort of the best and the brightest to our MBA program, to funding career treks and ULI memberships and NAIOP memberships and, things like that give our students a presence sort of in the greater real estate community, but also obviously us as well. So and at that time also, my students and alum who've come through the program will recognize this name. We hired Susan Drake, who was a hurricane, who for a long time it was just me and her and the executive director, and she just made stuff happen. She retired in 2021, and if we had an idea that came up in a meeting, she would start. Within a couple of weeks, it would be done.
No way.
And became sort of the den mother for all the students, and we worked really well together in the sense that I tried not to rein her in too much, without causing too much damage around the school. But we again started a bunch of new ventures, and she retired in 21. Kind of right at the beginning of COVID. Another essential hire was a guy named Jim Spaeth, who we hired as he was in Florida kind of during the global financial crisis, had some, worked for a developer, and obviously that everybody that was in development was impacted by that, was looking for a whole new change in direction in his career. And again, all the alumni will recognize Jim's name for sure. And in, say, 2012 or 13, we hired him to be in the career services group, focusing on real estate, to help us in the center kind of help find our kids jobs and make sure that we've got partnerships with a whole bunch of companies, which he did so well. We hired him away from them as our executive director after he was our fourth executive director, which he served in for 10 years, something like that. And now he's grown to be a full-time professor. So he's a professor of the practice. He teaches that development course. He teaches a capstone course in our undergraduate program. And he teaches the first case course in our MBA program, which frankly relieves me of a lot of responsibilities because those were my classes for many, many, many years. So he's got experience. He's got the careers. He's got the ability to create relationships with a bunch of employers. He's great with the students. Just got a poets and quants, and doesn't mean much to a lot of people probably, but it's big for us. They're sort of that's where you go if a student's looking to sort of go to a real estate school, they'll query poets and quants, and it has all the rankings of all that stuff. He was just listed as one of the top professors in MBA land. Just in the last few weeks, which is great. So he's been a great part of the team. And then, like I said, we hired, we've also grown that endowment from Leonard Wood probably tenfold now, so 5% of tenfold is a big number.
It's nice,
which is great. So we're completely independent from the university for our entire, except for faculty salaries for the staff that we have. So we have a new executive director, Jeff Tucker, who was an alum from class of 2000.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's really good. Had a nice career, sort of developing multifamily projects in China, all over China, which is really cool. And he was good enough to hire several of our students when he was doing that. Again, an inflection point in his career, came back to Chapel Hill, his wife and daughter, and has taken the reins of the Wood Center, which is great. Lynn Tachi, as I said, runs our undergraduate program. Katie Bowden does as the MBA sort of coordinator, if you will. And Katie Hambrick is kind of the overall head. And she wouldn't like me calling her the head of it, but she makes sure that all the trains are running. She does an incredible job. And then Kelsey Faulkner is our communications person. And
awesome.
They all came on during COVID, and we interviewed them kind of virtually, which is just extraordinary. But every one of them is just given so much back to us to help really put us where we are now, which has been awesome.
How do you make? Well, I want to spend a second on hiring, and we chatted when we spoke on the phone the first time, and then a little bit before. This is a little bit of a different episode because it's academia focused as opposed to private, right? A little bit different, but what I'll ask a lot of folks that come on the show is, because they're building these great, real estate engines, like what do they look for in hiring? So for you guys have built one of the best, if not the best, real estate school programs. But not only that, but like the product you're delivering goes to kids that are paying money to come. So like it's such a culture oriented, or the culture is super, super important.
Yep.
What do you look for in hiring all of these people? Like how do you, like what's intangible that you look for in people?
It's hard. I want to say, and this is sort of indicative of our whole program, part of it is the people you want to go have a beer with.
Yeah.
Again, it sounds quaint or whatever that word is, but these are all just really good people you want to hang around with outside school or whatever, which is great. And I should say, I'm getting close. I don't know how long it'll be till I retire, but I've been around for a long time, and new ideas and new people is always good. So again, through the COVID experience, I gave up a lot of my administrative responsibilities, which is why we have lots of people working for the Wood Center, which is why, we have an executive director like Jeff. But also want to give a shout out to Jacob Segui, my colleague, who's been with us for, I'll get the numbers wrong, let's say 13 years, who's taken the responsibilities for making sure that our curriculum are correct. He's literally a double PhD in rocket science and finance, which is unusual, obviously.
Yeah.
Really, really smart guy who is also a great teacher and researcher. And he's, again, just sort of somebody who is willing to put their shoulder to the plow and, really work hard to help us to, create new visions for the program, and also make sure we're delivering a great product to our students. And we have 2 junior faculty too, Franklin Sean and Vrinda Mittal, who one came from Columbia, one came from Stanford. They're in their, let's say, 3rd and 2nd years respectively, who again we're hoping they'll be there for a long, long time, as they sort of get familiar with Chapel Hill, which is easy to do, but also push forward in their research and teaching, so we can make sure they get tenured when it's their time.
Wow. Changing topics a little bit to curriculum. Over the years, what do you think your favorite courses have been to teach and be a part of?
I would say, again, one of them's the one I just handed off to Jim Spaeth. It's our first course. It's called Real Estate Process. Cool. Again, what it is a lot of our students come back with experience, and some of them with no experiences. So this is the homogenizing course where those with no experience in real estate have to really come up to speed on modeling and underwriting and jargon and, terminology and all that stuff. And that was probably the most fun because you could see, and again, as I've said a couple of times, the philosophy of our program is it's not a competitive program at all. It's very, it's very collegial. So people with experience help those who don't have experience, and that's kind of the secret sauce that makes everything work. And the way that course evolved was that, I would write new cases every year for something that was going on in the marketplace, usually with one of my alums who actually did the deal. So,
no way. Wow.
It's again, and almost every time when we were doing the case in class, I'd have that person come to class and sort of grill the kids. What were you thinking about there? Why wouldn't you have done this or whatever?
What a good product.
Oh,
that's
man,
crazy.
It's so much fun. Yeah. So, it's 28 session class where the first part would be kind of getting up to speed on the institutional background and, the development process and things like that. And then, every class would take 2 classes to get through it, but every class would be, a development deal or one of my guys is with Prudential comes into play a lot, but he's involved in their open-ended funds in the multifamily world. So everything, again, and it's all over the country. It's, whatever's kind of these people have been involved with in their real jobs. We write a case and they come in. And Jim Spate's done a great job of sort of coordinating that and keeping that going, as we go forward. But it was an opportunity for, somebody from the class of 93 to meet our current kids, right? But he's doing such cool stuff that, or somebody even from 212 or 2015 to sort of show the students where they might be at some point in their careers, if they work hard and all that stuff. And, and it keeps a lot of the alums involved as well. And the other one's just the real estate investment fund. That's cool. Just, we meet and we're meeting every week in the summer. So the kids are off doing their internships at night. It's a Zoom call at night. And then we meet twice a week throughout the school year. So it's tremendously work intensive for them. Then we started in 2007. We're on Fund 5, where we've invested almost $20 million over that period of time. And, it's real investors. I'm an investor in all 5 funds. It's an SEC registered investment company. These investors have real money at real risk in real estate deals that the students have pretty much complete control over in terms of where the investment dollars are going to go. Underwriting, working with accountants, working with lawyers. We're likely, as any fund would be, we're sort of almost the end of investing Fund 5. This is not a general solicitation by any means, but and this is absolutely not by any means not a general solicitation. But we're 80 some odd % invested, so naturally, probably start looking to work on getting the documents for Fund 6 out. The kids are completely responsible for organizing the outreach to the previous investors, but potential investors that might be interested, and then making the calls, and again, make sure that my alums or the other investors grill them, give them a really hard time as they would if it was in the real world and performance.
It is the real world.
It is, it's real money. So it's that's they source deals. They again do the underwriting. I'm there at every meeting, obviously, trying to provide the guardrails, but for the most part, they're, again, it's such a cool experience that they just work their butts off to make it work. And, we've invested everywhere from probably furthest northeast is Chester, New Jersey, to Milwaukee, to Portland, Oregon, to Arizona, to Albuquerque, New Mexico, Texas, sort of, and everywhere in between. It's just been an extraordinary experience, and obviously we only invest once, but we tend to own parts of assets for a long time. So, sometimes the kids have to deal with mistakes that their predecessors made. Of course. Just like any fund. But that's probably by far the most fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And again, just created it on a whim.
So is that a course or that's, okay.
Kids get credit for it. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
MBA students, we have anywhere right now. We've got 4 MBA students and 2 undergrads that don't get credit over the summer, but they work just as hard. But they are on their internships, and then they get course credit throughout the year.
Very cool.
Which is great. Yeah. So again, very unusual for that, and the faculty member gets course credit too, which works out even more. But it's a ton of work, obviously, but again, pays off. And get a kid. Literally, the idea came in a bar with this guy, Tom Harvey. Cool. Would it be cool if we did a private equity fund? They'll never let us do that. But after a lot of persuasion.
So where did are the proceeds tied back to the school or back to the program?
Great. It's it's a typical private equity fund with a 2 and 20. So, pay an 8% preferred. We get a management fee that mostly pays for our local administration with financial services and things like that. And then, first 2-3 funds were 60-40 with the last two, but 80-20. And the 20 or the 40, basically that promote goes back into our program.
No way.
Yeah, that's good.
That's crazy.
And it's been a great source of endowment for us.
I bet.
That again helps to pay for a lot of things around school. They go directly to support our kids, and it's great. I mean, they just put out a quarterly report. We just put out a quarterly report over the summer, so they got a feel for how hard it is to have a real job, and
no doubt,
and all this. But they work real hard, and it's we've had over 150 managers now over the last 18 years, all of whom are had a great experience. So it's good.
Super cool.
Yeah, it's fun.
Are there any courses I was thinking about when I was prepping for this? When I was in school, there were certain classes I knew in business that everyone always talked about. Oh, you're going to have X teacher, and this class is just hard, which were always the ones you learn the most in. Yep. But is there any course that you hear about from the students that is like the crux or a cornerstone or really challenging or maybe gets more buzz than other courses? I don't know.
Yeah, it's probably what I was talking about. The capstone course for the undergrads runs the same way as the MBA class, where there's people coming in and they're talking about their industry, but also making sure there's a case involved with every time they come. There's assignments due every period, so it's not like they're just coming in and having guest speakers. It's around a case where there'll either be some kind of pop quiz at the beginning, or a hand in, something like that. And that's probably that capstone course for the undergrad, and then for the MBA too, the first course that they take, which is case oriented, is probably the one that gets the most buzz, I would say. Yeah. Again, the fun's different because it's people apply, go through an interview process, and obviously have to succeed at that. It's we have many more that apply that can be on the fund, so that we don't dilute the experience of the students in managing the fund. So that's a little different, but that's probably also a differentiator, I'd say, not only of our program, but in terms of the kids who get chosen to be the managers.
That makes sense.
Yeah, which is good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
In wrapping up, Dave, what do you at UNC right now? I ask everyone these similar questions, but geared towards you. Like, what is the focus of the program now? Kind of forward looking. Is there anything kind of new on the horizon besides this 25th year that you're talking about coming up? That's obviously big. But is there? What are you focused on as you kind of push through these next couple of years?
Yeah. So again, maintaining sort of the really fun stuff that we do now, like the conference, the fund. Pushing the center forward and making that happen. Again, as I said earlier, it's no surprise. I'm an old guy, and I'll be. We've been working real hard for the last 5 years to sort of create this succession and transition that has gone enormously well, thanks to the people on our advisory board, thanks to the quality of people that we've hired. So that when I do, I will step down. I was going to say when or if, but when I sort of roll off and move down to the beach full time or do something like that, I feel really good that even where we are now, that we're in really good shape in terms of sort of pushing that forward. We've got the housing affordability initiative that we're working real hard. A lot of it's been funded, which is great through, again, the generosity of donors, some alums, but frankly, many who aren't alums that just think it's a really interesting sort of application for what we do, and finding other stuff too. We're this November, we'll move into a new building. Stephen D. Bell, the aforementioned Stephen D. Bell, who founded Bell Partners and retired several years ago, provided the lion's share of the funding for us to get into this building. So it's right next to our current building. There'll be some transition issues, as always the case, but it'll be a huge, again, difference maker, not just for our MBA program, but also for our real estate center. Most of the people on the building committee were our alums, which is great. So
that's cool.
We got a great office
I bet.
for the Wood Center, which is great. Great views and everything. But again, just sort of continuing to come up with new stuff, making sure the kids are getting a great education, continuing to, expand our presence with our corporate partners that are hiring our kids, and again, sort of making sure that our students are prepared, much more prepared than I was, is where we started this whole conversation.
Absolutely.
And taking over jobs and really hitting the ground running, which I think is one of the things that our students and our alums are really well known for.
I bet. This question is geared towards, obviously, most of our other shows, more like, hey, is there any asset class, service, or market that you haven't been in? So geared towards you, is there any part of the program? I mean, you have a fund, you have the minor option, you have the major, and then we have the MBA. Is there maybe any course or topic that isn't offered right now, or is there any part of the program that you would like to add that you haven't yet?
Wow, that's I don't know, man. We have a lot of people that are continuously thinking about this. In terms of trying to make sure that our curriculum meets the needs of our students and our employers. I would say I'll answer it in a different way, Matt. One is that we started a program in Charlotte. So we rent space from Highwoods, as a matter of fact.
There you go.
Which is great. It all comes around. And it's been now 3 years, I think. And our real estate program needs to have a greater presence there. Charlotte, obviously, based on where we are, it's growing like crazy. It's a lot of our alumni are based there and doing great things in real estate, literally changing the shape and the nature of the city itself with the South End stuff and all that. And Michael's a great example of somebody who's really taken the lead, I think, or helped sort of that happen. But our alumni all over down there, so we need to figure out a way to have more of a presence, whether it's through some kind of we do teach one class in the executive MBA program, but there's so much opportunity for speaker series, for I don't know, a lot of this is just completely spitballing, but certificate programs, otherwise engaging people. We have a cool program we just started, not just for real estate, where seniors in high school or juniors and rising seniors in high school take business intro classes for a certain number of weeks in the summer, just to get acclimated, to help them prepare for whatever might come as we go forward. So that's one thing I think we need to work on. We have an executive MBA and a weekend MBA program, which we have some exposure to, but I got to figure out a way to expand that as well. Yeah. But it's obviously a horsepower issue in terms of people who are all the people I've mentioned already, and I hope I didn't forget anybody, are all more than fully employed. So it's, it's just a matter of kind of harnessing the right people to do those kinds of things. But that seems like the lowest hanging fruit for us.
That makes sense. Last question, Dave. Who do you think, and this can be career oriented or life, but who do you think, and I know you've probably talked about most of them, but who do you think helped you the most along the way in your career?
That's a great question. I mean, obviously my dad, this guy Bob Schweitzer, who I talked about, Mike Miles, all my colleagues at Chapel Hill who've helped us grow sort of what we have at this point. Obviously my wife, she's been around our first date was in 1972. She was 15. I just turned 17. She was a week from turning 16. That's a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of water under the bridge. So she's been obviously very supportive. My two kids, one's a high school math teacher. She has two kids. And my son, who works for CBRE, actually, in real estate.
Wow.
Which is kind of cool. He gets to come to the conference every year, and we get to hang out on Franklin Street after that. But obviously, they've had an impact too. So it's been a good ride, man. I've been very lucky. Meet a lot of people, get all my alums that are out there. I can pretty much go to any city in the country, maybe in many in the world, where I can call somebody up and go have a beer with them.
No doubt.
Or come stay at their house with them.
Or their office building that's in the town that they own.
That
their company owns.
Or the multifamily project.
That's right.
Actually, this is a cool, completely aside, which is unexpected, but I've got some, I hope this doesn't get me in trouble with some students who work at Great Star. And they had a lot of students, hundreds of students actually, but the guys who are up in the D.C. area in my hometown of Philadelphia have put street names in my name in their multifamily projects.
No way.
Which is probably, like if I had a resume, that might be
that's on there.
One of the top lines. Yeah,
that's amazing.
Which is pretty cool. So shout out to George and John Clarkson for that. I appreciate it.
Wow, I love that. Dave, I think that's a great place to wrap. Is there anything UNC related that we missed, or anything that we missed that you wanted to make sure we chatted about?
I don't think so, man. Obviously universities are in a great state of change right now, given everything that's going on, not just for our alums, but for everybody that's out there. You all had some kind of shaping experience at whatever college you went to. One of the cool things about real estate is that over the last 25 years, a lot of people have gotten incredibly wealthy in real estate. And many, many schools have created real estate programs, and centers and what have you. So if there's anybody out there, no matter what college you went to, that, really wants to help make a difference for kids that come in behind them, get involved, teach classes, give money, or whatever. And obviously that I'm speaking to a lot of our UNC alums as well, although they have been extremely generous and helpful. And we do all appreciate that. Dave,
pleasure. Thanks for coming on the show. And thanks to Brian Leary and Taylor Vaughn as well for making this intro. And then lastly, thanks to the folks that let us be in here today. So Proactive Vacations, all their contact info will be in the episode. Thank you so much.